We've got a new development on the Kirk Cousins trade saga, and that is we might be waiting until the draft for a trade to happen. I'm going to break down this new rumor slash report that came in on today's episode. But really quickly, help me take down our Saints channel here at Chat Sports, hosted by Trace Gerard, who bet me today that they would get more likes than Falcons today. So scroll on down, click that thumbs up button if you haven't already. Now, Sports Illustrated's Albert Breer put out an article with some of the things he's hearing, the rumors and whatnot, and it included a lengthy portion all about Kirk Cousins. Here's what he wrote. Why would Cousins block a trade to have a place where he can start? My understanding, it would be chiefly to avoid the situation he found himself in last April when he was blindsided by Atlanta's decision to take Michael Penix Jr. with the 8th pick. Cousins has already signaled to teams that he would likely want to wait to see what happens over draft weekend before accepting a trade. This actually makes a ton of sense to me, right? If you look at it from Kirk Cousins' angle, why would he greenlight a trade to the Browns if they just take Shedeur Sanders at number 2? And then he's right back to where he started, where he's got a rookie who is breathing down his neck and is looking to take his job, and everyone's kind of waiting for him to get out of the way so the rookie can take over, and no one is really envisioning him here long term. So I fully agree with everything Albert Breer had to say in this snippet and his entire write-up regarding Kirk Cousins. I invite you to go read it yourself, but I still believe Kirk Cousins will be off the Falcons roster by the time NFL Week 1 gets here. I know that is not a group consensus, and not everyone wants to see Kirk Cousins off this roster, and some of it makes sense because you don't gain anything financially, although if you were to trade him, you would get some not salary cap relief, but just some overall, I guess a little bit cap relief, but you'd get some of that money off your books and less money Arthur Blank has to pay if you care about his money. You don't gain a ton of financial relief, though, but you do no longer have to go after a new backup quarterback. So that's kind of some savings right there. So I understand those arguments for wanting to keep Kirk Cousins. My argument for moving on from Kirk Cousins is I don't think it's going to be a good backup for Michael Penix. I don't think Cousins said he doesn't want to be here. He went to the owner and asked to go to a different team. So I don't believe Cousins wants to be a part of this team anymore, and I'm not interested in taking hostages for this team. So I would like to see Michael Penix have a backup who wants to be in Atlanta as a backup quarterback, not someone who's going to be pouting and unhappy with the current situation, which to me, all signs by Cousins indicate that is the case. So if you do not want the Falcons to move on from Kirk Cousins because you don't want to have to go pay a new backup quarterback since you're already paying Kirk Cousins, I get that. I have a solution. Swap backups. Take a backup quarterback from somewhere else and swap him with Kirk Cousins. Send Kirk Cousins to a place where he can actually compete for a starting job and bring a backup to Atlanta that's happy to be just that, a backup. So I have a couple of teams in mind. How about the Browns? They traded for Kenny Pickett. What if, after all, they end up dealing Pickett to Atlanta and they sell themselves on, we basically traded Kenny Pickett for Kirk Cousins by getting Pickett to Cleveland for a 5th-round draft pick. So it originally started with the Browns trading their backup, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and a 5th for Kenny Pickett. And if I told the Browns, hey, you could trade DTR and a 5th for Kirk Cousins, they'd probably be very much on board with that. So at the end, it's not that bad of a deal for Cleveland. And for Atlanta, they get a backup who is going to be, I think, much more happy to be a backup quarterback than Kirk Cousins. All right, if it's not Cleveland, what about the Giants? Let's say Aaron Rodgers goes to the Steelers and Russell Wilson picks the Cleveland Browns, and Joe Shane and Brian Dable are a little bit uneasy with Jameis Winston as the only legitimate starting option on that roster. They give Tommy DeVito a new start in Atlanta, and Kirk Cousins goes to the Giants. Or how about the Steelers? What if the Steelers miss out on Aaron Rodgers because he goes to the Giants and Russell Wilson goes to the Browns? Sorry, there's quite the triangle. It's a love triangle right now between Rodgers, Wilson, and then 3 vacancies in Cleveland, Pittsburgh, and New York. But anyway, let's say the Steelers decide, okay, after missing out on Russell Wilson, Aaron Rodgers, we feel like Kirk Cousins would be a better fit for us than, well, not a better fit, but give us a better chance of winning than Mason Rudolph. So Rudolph to Atlanta, Kirk Cousins to Pittsburgh. In this situation right here, you don't have to spend new money on a different backup quarterback. You're just swapping situations. All three of these backups weren't going to be starters with their new team anyway, so I don't think they're going to be super bummed out about having a different quarterback in front of them on the depth chart. They were always going to be QB2 at best, no matter what. And Kirk Cousins goes to a place where he could have a real chance to start. This, to me, feels like a big win-win-win across the board. Now, before we talk about some of the draft buzz out there, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We're going to have free agency coverage still as we get closer to the NFL draft, and then mock drafts, rumors, targets, all that stuff. We are closing in on 35,000 subscribers strong here at Falcons Today. So if you haven't yet, scroll on down, click that sub button. So I want to talk a little draft right now because I saw Raheem Morris was at Mike Green's Pro Day over at Marshall, and not a huge surprise to see the head coach that needs a pass rusher at a pass rusher's pro day. This is not some breaking news in my eyes, but I will say with more confidence as we get closer to the draft, it's going to be an edge rusher at pick number 15. If you're a frequent viewer of the channel, you know that Will Johnson is my favorite pick for Atlanta because I just think he's too good of a player to pass on all the way at 15 if he even gets to the 15th overall pick. But with how bad the pass rush was, even if Johnson is there, I expect the Atlanta Falcons to select an edge rusher. So I thought what better time than the present to run through my top 5 edge rushers for the Atlanta Falcons. At number 1, it's Abdul Carter, and I just wanted to put him on this list so that we all could acknowledge that he is the number 1 edge rusher in this draft class. He is not falling to 15. So moving on. At number 2, this is going to be a surprise. I've got Jalen Walker, someone that we've talked about on the channel a handful of times, a player that I have not been super upbeat about for the Falcons to select at 15. But I was traveling this past weekend, went to Vegas, had some time at the airport, and I devoted that time to Jalen Walker, which sounds a little weird, but he was a prospect I just did not feel like I had a good enough grasp on and enough knowledge on to really come to a conclusion. And after some time on the plane and sitting at my gate, I left Vegas with less money, but way more appreciation for Jalen Walker as a player. And I think this would actually be a great pick for Atlanta. I used to fade Walker coming to the Falcons because I wanted this team to get an edge rusher, and I view Jalen Walker as a tweener, someone that might be an off-ball linebacker at the NFL, 6'1", 243. But I did some more homework on it. Micah Parsons, for example, he's an example of an off-ball linebacker at Penn State that slowly made the transition to being a full-blown defensive end now in the NFL. Not too much bigger than Walker, but 6'3", 247 at the combine. And I think he's faring pretty well as a defensive end. So I don't think it's out of the question for Walker to, beef up a little bit more and be an off-ball, be a traditional edge rusher for Atlanta. And then you look at the production, and you fall in love with it. Him and Michael Williams were tied with 6.5 sacks to lead the Bulldogs, 60 tackles, 11 tackles for loss. The reason why I don't think he is viewed as a more consensus top 10 pick is he really only started 1 year for UGA, which I don't think is an indictment on him. I think it's a reflection on how good and deep and talented that Georgia defense is year after year after year. So when I look at Atlanta's just overall defense, sure, pass rusher is number 1. But you know what they need? This defense just needs dogs. They need playmakers. They need guys. They need jersey sellers. And I believe that Jalen Walker is going to be an extremely versatile, accomplished, and electric player in the NFL. And right now, Atlanta's defense, it doesn't have any sense of a direction up front. They are starting from scratch, it feels like. So if you're starting from scratch, go get the best player, and we'll figure out the rest and where he is after. This is a complete 180 for me. For not just a week or 2 weeks ago, I was saying, no thanks to Walker. I don't want a linebacker. I want an edge rusher. And then I was immersed into everything there is to know about Jalen Walker over the weekend. And I walked away with that thinking of, yeah, this is the guy that I love to see in a Falcons jersey. Keep him in Georgia, and I think this is going to be a player that in a few years you can build your defense around, that you can put in different spots, and you'll be glad he's on your team and you're not playing against him. So, Jalen Walker, that's my number 2, but it might as well be number 1 player for the Falcons since Abdul Carter's not falling to 15. Let's run through 3, 4, and 5. At number 3, I'm going to go with Mike Green. If you throw the tape on and you look at what he did in 2024, you're going to have a tough time convincing me that there is a better defensive end, pure defensive end at that position, right? Green, in my eyes, is someone that we can look at as a player that can step in here and immediately start hunting down the quarterback. I don't think there's a lot to develop. I don't think this is some raw prospect. He had 17 sacks to lead the country. And sure, playing in the Sun Belt may not jump out to you as a tough competition, and it really isn't. But when they went up against some good competition like Ohio State in September, he was all over Will Howard. Coming in at number 4 now, let's go with a different Bulldog, Michael Williams. This is more of a traditional defensive end edge rusher who did not have the production that most people were hoping to see out of him in 2024, but I'm willing to look at the ankle injury early in the year as a major factor as to why that was the case. Only had 5 sacks, 21 tackles, 2 forced fumbles, but Williams, I believe, is a player that can really start to develop at the next level as that ankle gets healthy and that frame is prototypical for a defensive end or outside linebacker. And then at number 5, I've got Tennessee's James Pierce Jr. A lot of people thought he might be the number 1 pick going into 2024. Did not quite live up to first overall pick expectations, but is still a first-round prospect and first-round pick in my eyes. The pass rushing production was not quite as prolific, I guess we'll say, in 2024 as people were hoping it would be. Finished with just 7.5 sacks, 38 tackles. I think he's a better run stopper than people are giving him credit for, and maybe that's just my Tennessee bias coming through. There are some concerns about his locker room presence and his character in that regard, and I know during the pre-draft process, people only care about what you're like when the pads are on, but it's important to reflect back on some guys on the Falcons and other teams that had concerns going into the draft and look at how those concerns have aged, and some of them are very fair, and teams may regret that as a result. So Pierce comes in at number 5 because I think he is one of the fastest edge rushers in recent history. I mean, ran a sub 4.5 40-yard dash. So if you want speed, he's your guy. But to end it all here, would you take Jalen Walker at pick number 15? Yes or no? I would. I think he is just that great of a pure football player. And for a defense that just needs some overall talent, take the best player. And then we'll figure out the rest later on. So, complete 180 change on my perspective on the Georgia defender. Before we sign off, 2 quick things. 1, Fanatics, I don't know if it's a glitch in the system, but they continue to roll out this really good clearance sale. So if you want to get this sideline gear, some t-shirts, some polos, whole bunch of stuff over at chatsports.com/ATL sale. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. To conclude today's episode, we're going to pick one commenter out of the chat from our previous video and give them a quick shout out here. So let's spin that wheel. Commenter of the day, ladies and gentlemen, is... Ooh, it's looking like it's Batmain. Batmain, thank you so much for commenting on our recent video. 2 claps for you. 1, 2. Enjoy your Monday, and I will be back tomorrow with more on the Dirty Birds.